So we are going to start the assembly process of this OS12CZ that you guys see me take apart in the last video, and light the torch and get this underway. So the carburetor is clean, block, everything is cleaned. I use simple green to clean it, and 99% rubbing alcohol. So this is typical chemicals that I use. If you're going to use super clean, be careful because it can eat aluminum and it can destroy the anodizer on cylinder head. So this stuff, be aware, it's very caustic. Caustic attacks aluminum. So we're going to heat the engine block. You guys see me do this before. A lot of you disagree on this, but that's okay. So as long as you use common sense, you are fine. This is a pretty thin block, so we don't need to give it tons of heat, but just enough. Until you see the oil smoke a little bit, then you put the bearings in. The bearings are chilling on the crankshaft in the freezer behind me. I'm going to have a sip of beer. I'm drinking Canadian. As long as you keep the heat flowing, you're okay. Once you see a little poof of smoke from the oil, that's when you know you're ready. And we're right about there. Point the torch, keep the heat on. Get the heat out of the way. And our crankshaft with our bearing. Our bearing goes in first. Rear bearing goes in last. Give a tug on the crank. Bearings are in. Just like so. I can't touch this engine for about 15 minutes maybe. So let's discuss an air filter for a minute. So this is the air filter. It's dirty as hell and needs to be cleaned. But this is the original air filter, and I thought it was really interesting. It's all aluminum, and it has a little pinch screw right there. I'm going to try and attempt to clean this with something. I'm not exactly quite sure yet. I'm going to try some simple green cleaner and see where we get. All the other parts have been cleaned. The carburetor has been cleaned and oiled with after and oil. Like I said, this is a slide carburetor with no direction on the slide. It just kind of is how it is. This carburetor has no markings. It looks like it's been glued back together at one point. I've never seen anything like this before. This is pretty new. Well, old but new to me. So let's put it that way. But it's like the old HPI style where you have two screws that hold it down. I don't believe those two flathead screws off to the right of me are the correct screws, but we will find the correct screws. It almost looks like this carburetor is like homemade, like someone had a nice machine shop and they kind of had one or two pieces laying around and they made the rest. Just by how kind of, I guess what would be the word to look for would be primitive looking. But I guess there's the idle adjustment. I have no idea. I've never actually even dealt with this carburetor before. I know nothing about it. So your guess is as good as mine. If anyone out there recognizes this, please leave a comment. Tell me lots. I'd love to know. That'd be absolutely terrific. So we're going to oil our screws, which we have all our screws right here. And the oil we're going to use is a mixture of automatic transmission fluid, diesel, and kerosene. And that's kind of what I use, like a multi-use kind of oil for everything, besides putting it in my engine. Or engines, I should say, because that's plural. I have more than one. Turns beautifully. This is used bearings. I just cleaned them with Super Clean, which took the varnish off the bearings. I rinsed them out with hot water and then dried them with alcohol, meaning that I soaked the bearings in 99% rubbing alcohol, which displaces the water, air dried them, and then lubricated them with afterburn oil. This is what I use. It's a Great Plains afterburn oil. It's very cheap. You can find it pretty much any hobby shop. So you can hear, even with almost 30-year-old bearings, are perfect. There's no play or any kind of slop. So this engine's not super hot, but it's hot enough. And we're going to assemble it here. We have our tube of castor oil. Right, let's get down to business, shall we? We have our piston and connecting rod. One thing I did do, I've seen a lot of other people do this too sometimes. You don't have to, but I've done this to a lot of engines and it's never had any problems, is the oil hole. If I can see focus. The oil hole, what I do is I take a drill bit and with my fingers I just put a slight chamfer on that oil hole, and I do the same on the top of the connecting rod as well, so that way it's kind of like a funnel to help the oil kind of funnel down in there. Because basically the way this works is every time this connecting rod comes around, it kind of scoops up some oil from inside the crankcase, and I think with a bit of a funnel shape on there, it'll make that easier, so I can get some more oil. I could be wrong, but it's something I've done for a long time. I've done it to many engines and never had a problem. Just another thing, I'm kind of procrastinating here because the engine is very hot. Two different sleeves here. We have this is a 12 CVX, and this is a 12 CZ sleeve. And we're just going to note the differences here for a minute. As you can see, the exhaust ports are... The CV has a slightly larger exhaust port. If we turn them, the CZ on this side has a larger transfer port, much larger in fact, than the CV. As you can see, it also has the CZ has a larger intake port. It's the same on the other side, nice long kind of ovalated port. So that's just something I kind of thought was interesting that you guys might want to know about. You guys probably don't care, but I thought it was interesting. So let's grab. I have to take out shares in the paper towel industry. Let's hit that with some alcohol, and let's make sure our cylinder has no kind of garbage in there. Right, nice and clean. Okay, let's get on with it here. So we're going to take the cap off, castor oil. We're going to drip some inside where the wrist pin is. Work that back and forth. And we're going to put some on the crank pin, or connecting rod pin, whatever you guys want to call it. And we're going to install the piston and sleeve. Let's put a drop of oil in there. Because you should. And some castor oil on the piston. And this side, this hole faces away from the exhaust port, so we're going to put that guy in. Oop, our crank's popping out. Okay, so we're going to put that in there. Should slip right on, and it did. Alright, excellent. And we're going to take our cylinder, same thing. Dot of castor oil. And we're going to put some afterburn oil on the outside. The reason why I don't put castor oil on the outside is because it will bake on and stick and make your sleeve very difficult to remove at a later date. I know a guy that did that, so just a forewarning for you guys. And if we muck around. Oh, there it went. Really easy. Line up your notch with your sleeve. Make sure everything turns nice and free. There's no binding anywhere. If anything feels tight, take it apart and inspect to make sure there's nothing wrong. This engine basically has no pinch left, but we're going to run with it anyways at a later date. And that freaking train is back down the street again. Damn it, I hate it. I wish it would go away forever. And we're going to put our head screws in. Always that one screw. Anyhow. Okay, so we have our head gasket. Very important. Don't ever lose that. And we have our 2.0 hex. And we're going to put on our cylinder head. Very important also. Make sure to lubricate your screws a little bit with some kind of oil because you don't want to put them in dry. It's just a practice that you should, well, practice. The cylinder head, I don't really think it has any particular way it goes on. So we're just going to kind of stick it on there and screw it down. Remember not to go all the way tight on one screw, just kind of run them down a little bit and then tighten them up at the end. Wish I could have music playing to this, but unfortunately YouTube doesn't like that anymore for some reason. Okay. I'm not going to tighten the screws down all the way because this engine has to come apart again anyways. Put a dot after an oil on the starter shaft. Insert the starter shaft in the back plate. Make sure it's also clean. I didn't clean it, but it's clean enough. And this doesn't seem like it has any particular way it goes. There's, oh, yes it does. This cutout faces up to make clearance for the piston. So we'll hold the crank, and turn the starter shaft. You should hear it click in. Oh, I think it's already done that. It has. Okay, good. And now we need a Phillips screwdriver. We have our 4 screws. We're going to put those in. I don't tighten them down one at a time like I said before. I kind of leave them loose and then tighten them in a cross pattern after. It's just better practice that way. Like I said, I'm not doing anything up super tight here because this engine is going to come apart again because the cylinder sleeve and piston are going to be sent away to Ray, that's Ray, R-A-Y, /A Racing to have a repinch done, or R-B, B as in bruschetta, whatever, mods, RB mods, to have it repinched so you can get a little bit more life out of this old CZ. CZs were great dirt bikes back in the 80s and 90s. I used to have a CZ dirt bike. I had a Model 513, and it was an absolute monster from hell. Two-wheeled suicide machine, if you will. We're going to put our screws back in, or attempt to. We're holding our carburetor on. This is kind of like the old style that HPI uses. I'm sure these are not the original screws. I could be wrong. I have no idea how many people have owned this truck before, or this engine before I did. But we're going to put back what was there. Okay, so there it is, all put back together. That is the OS 12 CZR, OS Max, CZ, completely reassembled. So stay tuned, guys. There will be more on this engine once I have the cylinder and piston resized, and there will be a running video at a later date. Anyways, guys, take it easy as always. And keep burning nitro. Right on.